Hello everyone! Today I'll be sharing my thoughts on the 1998 miniseries Our Mutual Friend, which is an adaptation of the novel by Charles Dickens. I saw this once about 15 years ago, and I really liked it, and I've wanted to rewatch it ever since. But being the disciplined little nut that I am, I kept insisting to myself that I needed to read the book before I could see it again. Well, a few months ago, after a decade of saying I would, and at least one false start, I finally did it, and I loved it. I did a brief review of it in my last reading video, which I've put a link to in the description if you want to check that out. And so at last, I was ready to watch Our Mutual Friend again. And now I'm going to talk about it. The complicated narrative unfolds across 4 90-minute episodes. Rich old Mr. Harmon has died, leaving his fortune plus a bride to his estranged son John. But when a body is pulled from the river and identified as John Harmon, the inheritance passes instead to old Mr. Harmon's faithful servants, Mr. and Mrs. Boffin. The humble Boffins decide to enter the lion's den that is society, aided by a Mr. John Rokesmith, a mysterious man who offers to work as a private secretary, and Miss Bella Wilfer, the young woman who was supposed to marry John Harmon, though they never met. Meanwhile, Gaffer Hexam, who fished the body from the water, is suspected of its murder. This worries his daughter Lizzie, who sends her brother Charlie away to school. She soon finds herself an object of fixation for 2 men, Eugene Rayburn, a lawyer whose friend handles the Harmon case, and schoolmaster Bradley Headstone. As you might expect with Dickens, these storylines mingle and merge, and some characters are not quite what they seem. First off, I was shocked by how little I recognized here. I thought my memory was better than this. Apparently, most of what I've been remembering all these years had to do with the main couples, and those memories were reinforced because I would see clips of them in period drama fan edits, which I used to watch a lot. So, a good deal of this miniseries felt new to me, which isn't a bad thing, and since I am both older and wiser, and I recently read the book, there's a lot of stuff I noticed, I picked up on, and I understood that I missed as a teen. The screenplay was adapted by Sandy Welch, who followed the book quite closely. I do know what's been left out, but the cuts are impressively clean. Moreover, there are no strange additions, and it hasn't been sexified. There is one bit of nudity, though, in Part 4. A character removes his clothes and walks into a river. It's obvious when it's coming, and it's not really gratuitous. I mean, they could have not shown his bum, but the scene does occur as described in the book, and it is relevant to the plot. Welch also adapted the 2004 North and South, the 2006 Jane Eyre, and the 2009 Emma, which are all winners in my book. We'll graciously ignore that her last 2 works were, from what I've heard, atrocious adaptations of The Turn of the Screw and Romeo and Juliet. My one major disappointment with this adaptation, especially now that I've read the book, is that there's not much humor. Since I was 14 years old, I've been trying to convince people that Dickens was funny, and while others may disagree about this, I felt Our Mutual Friend had some hilarious passages. There were descriptions and certain phrases that I read over and over, and they were making me laugh my head off. They were so funny, so clever, but you would never guess that if you just watched this. Those parts aren't really translated to the screen, and a lot of it is just description and narration, and of course that's not going to be shown, conveyed in this format, but I still missed it. There is some quirkiness and social oddities and ridiculous rich people, and there certainly is a lot of drama. For the most part, this miniseries is exceptionally well cast, and I do want to share some notes on certain characters and performances. I'll try not to go into too much detail, but you may consider this a slight spoiler warning. Based on part 1, you may be led to assume that attorney Mortimer Lightwood is the main male protagonist, but he's more of a side character who links the storylines together. He's sometimes a participant, sometimes an observer, and sometimes absent from the story altogether. His best friend is Eugene Rayburn, played by Paul McGann, who is one of the main protagonists. Another lawyer with zero work to do, Eugene is a quiet, kind of cynical guy who doesn't always say what he means and doesn't always mean what he says. I find this character's air of indolence and irresponsibility kind of off-putting. I don't warm up to him until much later, the latter part of part 3, if I can be specific, but McGann's interpretation is spot on. And if you've seen this, and you just heard me say the latter part of part 3, you're thinking, so basically, most of part 4, he's... well, that's not the reason why. There's a key shift for the character in part 3, and that is what makes the difference. And then, it's the making of him in part 4. The other male protagonist is John Rokesmith, also known as Julius Hanford, also known as John Harmon, played by Stephen McIntosh. And despite the heavy secrets he's keeping, he comes across as a lighter personality than Eugene. He's got woes, but he still manages to be kind, to smile, and to have positive interactions with people. This is after they clear up his backstory early in part 2, something they desperately needed to do because initially he comes across as kind of spooky, skulking around corners and spying from the shadows. They've got to explain what's going on because otherwise you'll write him off as a sketchy weirdo. And maybe some people feel that way about him even after the explanation. I don't know. I honestly, people respond differently, especially young people respond differently to some things, some storylines, some relationships in these period dramas than they used to. So I have no idea. John goes to work for the Boffins, and I love the Boffins. They're both perfectly cast, and they do a great job with certain changes the characters have to go through and identities they assume. Likewise, Anna Friel shines as Bella Wilfer. She is not likable when you first meet her. She's a complainer, she's judgmental, she's hungry for money, and she's very honest about that. But hold on, because she has a good arc. She undergoes a softening of heart that makes her a much sweeter, more endearing person. A less complicated but still conflicted character is Lizzie Hexam, played by Keely Hawes. She is pure and saintly, fitting the Dickens heroine archetype. I do wonder if Hawes's accent and speech aren't a bit too posh and clean for this character, at least at first. She's supposed to be uneducated and illiterate, but she sounds pretty genteel to my ears. There are two main couples here, John and Bella, and Eugene and Lizzie. And I definitely prefer one romance over the other. Both couples have a rocky and somewhat dubious road to happiness, but John and Bella share more scenes, more dialogue. We see more of them getting to know each other, they actually talk to each other, and their love story has some very cute moments. That's not to say that Eugene and Lizzie don't have their moments as well, and that I don't get drawn into their storyline. I do. I just respond to it differently. And in general, I tend to prefer the couples who communicate and share friendly screen time. It's not the adaptation's fault, it's Dickens' fault. Many of the interactions that allegedly occur between Eugene and Lizzie happen off the page. We're told that he's been visiting her, but we don't see most of these visits. And the ones that we do see, both of them kind of have a hard time talking to each other because of the social gulf between them, socioeconomic gulf. So it's not really it's just the way their relationship is. And John and Bella just appeal to me more. The boy playing Lizzie's brother Charlie is older than I had pictured, which is kind of startling. And then, well, Charlie Hexam is a little turd. A selfish, prideful boy who's worried that his sister will embarrass him and wreck his chances for a prosperous future. So there's that. But also, the actor doesn't do a great job. He's as aggravating as he should be, yes, but his line readings are also stilted and kind of awful, which makes his performance stick out like a wrong note. David Morrissey, on the other hand, is pitch perfect as Bradley Headstone, who becomes obsessed with his prize pupil's sister. It's a very physical performance. Faced with rejection, Headstone's disciplined facade begins to crack. He turns pale and sweaty and literally chokes on his words when he tries to talk to her. And then he just spirals. I was absolutely shocked the first time I saw the cemetery scene where he proposes to Lizzie and is rejected, and then consumed with jealousy and rage, he smashes his fist into a gravestone, or a headstone. Dickens, I see what you did there. The icing on the cake is the way he nurses his hand against his mouth for a second, which leaves a smear of blood on his face for the rest of the scene, like he's some kind of vampire. And then they double down on that later on, and I don't especially remember this from the book. Maybe I do. There's a scene where he coughs up blood and it dribbles down his chin, and it was like, oh my goodness, yikes, what is wrong with you? It's a repulsive, frightening performance, and it's no wonder David Morrissey went on to be cast as a major villain, the governor, in The Walking Dead. But lest you think he only ever plays creepy bad guys, hold on a second. He did also play one of the heroes, Colonel Brandon, in this adaptation of Sense and Sensibility. Anyway, there is a theme here. Unrequited lovers watching and following the object of their desire. When Eugene or John does it, it's pining, it's romantic. When Bradley Headstone does it, it's stalking, it's creepy, he's a psychopath. I won't comment on all of the other characters, but I would like to mention that Timothy Spall isn't at all like what I was picturing for Mr. Venus, but he's got that ponderous sadness down, and he was one of the funniest parts of the show. David Bradley also isn't like what I was picturing for Rogue Riderhood. I remembered he was in this, but I thought he played Lizzie's father. However, now that I've re-seen this, I can't believe I forgot the role he played. It's a very important role, and he's very good. I was taken aback to realize that nice Colonel Fitzwilliam from 1995's Pride and Prejudice was here, playing that loathsome worm Alfred Lamley. Yeah, he's in there under that hair and mustache. And while this Lady Tippins is an over-the-top person, she's not nearly as silly as she is on the page. There are some characters omitted, like Lightwood's secretary, or stripped of dialogue, like the schoolmistress yearning for Headstone. The cuts I noticed most were Mr. Fledgeby and Mr. Twemlow. Fledgeby is a moneylender trying to buy his way into society, trying to pass him off as this flashy young gentleman. He's a nasty, devious character, and he has some memorable scenes. He's a bad guy, but he also has one or two scenes that are quite funny. However, I can see the economy of cutting him out, especially because if you cut him out, then you can cut out Mr. Podsnap and his daughter Georgiana, and Fledgeby's Jewish employee, who does appear here, but only as the teacher Rayburn hires for Lizzie and Jenny Wren. Mr. Twemlow, who also has connections to the Fledgeby subplot, does make a brief appearance in Part 1, but I didn't notice him, and he isn't identified, and he doesn't have any lines until Part 4. This is surprising, considering how much he pops up in the book, and I became fond of him in his perpetually befuddled state. He's just this bewildered old bachelor who, most of the time, doesn't remember how he came to meet people. He doesn't know who's hosting the party. He's just this poor guy. And I loved him. So I was disappointed that he wasn't in this more. But, again, I understand the reason for the edit. And I appreciate that he does at least get to have the last word in society. Switching gears, there is some attractive photography and some sunny scenes, which are a rarity in a Dickens adaptation. Note Lizzie's angelic backlighting in the cemetery and Eugene's clear-eyed close-up in the meadow, plus many of the later John and Bella scenes are bright and cheery. A few other scenes stand out, like the one where Jenny prods and kind of teases Lizzie about Eugene. Jenny's face is just out of focus, but as Lizzie confides her feelings, we see how her emotions affect Jenny, and her face kind of crumples, and then she valiantly strains to hide what she's feeling. I like the scene where Eugene takes Mortimer along on his nightly walk around the city to reveal his constant shadow. The sequence is suspenseful, it's got great pacing, and it looks very good. They even managed to make this part watery. The scene between Lizzie and Bella is nicely done, as Lizzie's confession prompts Bella to have some remorseful self-reflection. The scene where John Rokesmith loses his temper with Silas Wegg, I was like, whoa, John! Stephen McIntosh, you're so soft-spoken, I didn't know you had it in you. I like it. It's the fire of righteous indignation. Plus the line, "You're lucky I don't twist your head off and throw it out the window," is really good. I'm gonna have to look it up. Was that actually in the book? It was very well done, and I love how the ladies in the background are like, which is kind of how we responded, but it's not like oh my goodness, he's being so mean and violent and scary, I don't like it, ugh. No, it's 100% justified. That reaction is deserved, and it's just a very satisfying moment. And the execution of Headstone and Riderhood's confrontation is very good. Reading that scene, I kind of wondered how they could choreograph that, because it could be tricky, but they nailed it. While there are a few things that I wish were a bit different about this miniseries, I still really like it, and I still consider it one of the top underrated period dramas of the 1990s. I do acknowledge that the story isn't the easiest to follow. The first time I watched it, I got a little lost, and I wasn't the only one. My mom and maybe my sister were watching with me, and we all agreed when Part 1 ended that we were confused, but we either restarted or pressed on to see if it got any clearer, and it did. The flashback sequence in Part 2 helped a lot. So, if you start watching this and you find yourself floundering, but you want to persevere with it, let me offer you that hope. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think of Our Mutual Friend if you have seen it. If you haven't, you do have some options. It's available on DVD, so you could check your local library. That's how I saw it the first time. Or you could stream it on Tubi with ads. I believe Prime has it, BritBox has it. There might be one or two other options. So let me know what you think. I'll be back next weekend with another review, and I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.